Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Zebra TV newsroom. Tonight, we are here with Steven Peterson, who is a candidate for mayor in the city of Alexandria elections coming up this month. So, as we're doing with all of our candidates, mayoral candidates, we're asking a variety of conversational questions and invite you to submit your own questions on Facebook, and we'll be taking those later in the evening. So, Stephen, welcome. We're glad to have
Thank
you
you
here.
for having me.
I will say we appreciate your coming right here from the airport. I know that that can be a dash sometimes.
Well, no, I am just glad to be here. Somebody checked an email, so somebody's going to get an earful, but we'll worry about that one later.
Good. So, I don't have a specific set of questions because I feel like
Good, because I just want to talk.
they have been asked over and over, but I am interested in what I call the fabric of life. And so I know that you grew up primarily in Fairfax County and as part of, dare I say it, a Republican family.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like for you? Was your family always interested in current events and politics? Was voting important?
Well, my father was some of who don't know, was an influential man
Right.
in the state of Virginia. He ran the house like a dictatorship. You did it his way, or that was the only way.
Okay.
And he was a staunch Republican, and so I was at the company for 25 years, and you just towed the line on what he did. And as I got older, I'm almost 60. We started to differ in some of our views.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was president of the company, and I've since left it. Because I didn't share the same views. So the family doesn't even support my campaign because I am a Democrat. And that's okay, right? My wife and I, we moved on, and they have their views, I have my views. And so that's totally up to them, and I'm fine with it.
But did you, as a child, did you understand the importance of, say, local governments?
No, not really. My father, he kept business, at the office a
Mm-hmm.
lot. He was a workaholic. He would come home for dinner, and then he would go back to the office. But he didn't involve us, obviously, until we went into the company, my brothers and I. But he kept the family issues and family life separate from the business life until became, until we got into much larger scale projects like National Harbor, which I was very involved in.
Mm-hmm. So, what is it then that moved you into thinking that politics was a place that you wanted to be at this time in your life?
If you had told me a year ago that I would be running for mayor, I would have told you you're crazy. All right, I am a business extrovert and a social introvert. All right, so even when I was president of the company, one of the reasons I left it is because I really didn't like the politics of it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago, not so. 30 years ago, not so much. But as the company got larger, politics played a much larger role. And the first thing I did when I became president of the company is I said, no more cuts and ties, right? That's just not me. I like being behind the scenes, and I don't necessarily, when I say out front, I don't like going to those political events. My brother, bless him, he loves them.
Mm-hmm.
And my father, not so much, but he knew he had to. And like I said, that wasn't for me. But once I started over the last year and hearing some of the different things, I said, you know what, I'm just not comfortable with what's going on within the city of Alexandria. And I just kept thinking, God, is this something you really want to do? And I kept saying to myself, no. And I didn't even talk to my wife about it. As the joke goes, I did wake my wife up at 3 o'clock in the morning and tapped her on the shoulder and said, I'm going to run for mayor. She said, that's nice. And she went back to sleep.
Back to sleep.
And then at 6:30, she tapped me on the shoulder and said, did you just tell me you're running for mayor? So that's kind of how it started. Now, we talked because I said, I'm not going to do this unless I have your support. And she's 100% behind me. Because she knows that I have been called unfiltered, all right? Because I'm a very passionate person. But that's okay, But I have the passion. When I jump into something, I'm going to give it 110%, everything I do. So I really had to make the decision, do I really want to do this for the next 3 to 6 years? Because people ask me, do you have, higher political aspirations, right? The two candidates I'm running against, they are, I would see them as career politicians, right? If I lose this, I'm going to be okay, all right? And I'm going to move on and do other things. I gave it my best shot. Like I said, I was at a wedding this weekend with a lot of people that know me and are totally behind me, saying, wow, Peterson running for mayor. That is crazy, but we're all behind you because they know. I've been in business for 30 years, so I think that I can take this city and take my business acumen and apply that to the mayors. Now, especially also being in real estate for 30 years, when you look at being mayor, right, so much is about land use, right? And I think I'm pretty qualified for that because that's what I've done for the last 30 years. Well, I started off counting dump trucks, right? When I decided to enter the company, my father pulled me into his office. He said, I don't want to see you for 5 years, right? You're no good to me. Go out and learn the business from the people in the company. Yeah. And so that's what I did. And then I worked my way up and eventually became the president of the development company. And then I became the president of the whole company for a few years. Like I said, I then been there, done that with that. And my father and I were very close. Obviously, he has passed 3 years ago last week. And he and I were very close. But my brother has stepped in and is now CEO of the company. I've done that. I've gone off. I was doing some things out in Austin, Texas. But when I decided to run, I said, if I become mayor, this is gonna be a full-time job. All right, this job is too important to be a half-time job. All right, maybe some people can do that in the past, but like I said, when I commit to something, I'm gonna give it 100%. City Hall is gonna be my office. Okay.
So let me ask you this: Alexandria and the city council, it's a very social and it's a very political position. Constant headlines, constant questions. You don't like that, by your own admission.
No, but I am very good behind the scenes, and taking on a role like that, of course that I'm going to have to accept that type of role. I'm not going to run and hide from it.
Okay.
Not at all. All I'm just saying is that, you know what? Some people love to get out there and say, look at me. I'm just not, I'm not when I grew up, my father was just like, you don't create a lot of attention. Don't you ever hurt the reputation of the family. So it was just kind of ingrained in us, not to be out front like that. Okay. That was probably because my father liked to be out front.
Well, that does make a difference. So, in my experience, no one who has ever run for mayor without being on city council first has won.
That's okay. But nobody else has had 30 years of experience running a $1 billion company either. So people ask me, why didn't you want to run for city council? Because I think I am best suited to be the mayor. All right. And some people might say, well, that's an arrogant statement. I don't have time to run for council for 6 years. That's not what I want to do. That's like I said. I want to come in and make a difference, shake things up. Right? This city's been run from a top-down management standpoint, and the city council just falls right in line. If you look at the votes over the last 6 years, what is it? 7-0, 6-1, 5. That's because they just say what he says, and that's just not the way it should be. Right? I don't think the citizens have a voice, and that's all that's what really got me going here. Is just the citizens they're saying, just anybody but them. Because we're not listening to, right? And this city deserves a voice. And I'm going to give it to them if I become mayor. And I hope if I don't become, that one of the two candidates will give the citizens a voice. Because the arena, all right? December 13th came and they said, "Hey, let's celebrate. We're going to have this great $2 billion development," with zero input from the citizens. I mean, to me, that's exactly the opposite of how you run a city, right? You got to have transparency and say, "Hey, we're thinking of doing this. It could be a great thing," right? We know that there's going to be some issues on transportation and on crime and affordable housing, which I don't like the word affordable housing. I like income based, because I think every one of the viewers that we're talking to here, anybody in the city, has a different socioeconomic situation. So just to say affordable housing, I don't like that. But
that I agree with you. I think it's a misnomer.
Right.
As to what one person can afford is not what it looks like to another person.
So I agree with you.
So let me ask you this. Just talking about the arena in general. I know that I went to a program about the arena, and this was, I think, right before the final decision came and it was taken off the table.
So what month would this be? This would be March?
Oh gosh, it was probably April. Maybe it was March. I don't remember. But
it's March 13th, actually.
One of the leading proponents of the arena was talking about the fact that you can't put together, a lot of people were talking about transparency and not knowing ahead of time and not having any input, kind of exactly what you've said. His point was, and I happen to agree to a certain standpoint, that you can't put together a deal like that in public. That the level of talks it has to be done behind closed doors.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think you have to be, like I said, transparent out in front and throw out the issues. If you know those issues were going to come. You knew that when you say, "I'm going to bring 20,000 people into this suburban location 350 times a year," right? And there's not going to be a traffic issue, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of said, we'll get to it. And even Councilman Gaskin said, "You know what? We made a grave error," okay? Because, if you're going to surprise me with that. But again, I go back to the arena as, look, it just wasn't the appropriate use in a suburban location. So I was the first one to come out with that, and I didn't wishy-wash like the other two councilmen. I got a little upset in a debate last week because Mayor Jackson, she came out and she was taking selfies on December 13th, right, for the arena. And then on March 13th, the funding got killed, so the deal died. And then on March 18th, she came out in opposition to the arena. And then last week, she came out with a $30,000 mail piece saying, "I was the only candidate that was against the arena since the beginning." That's what I hate about politics, that type of stuff. That's just not true. Don't say it and make me get into uncomfortable positions in public forums and call people out like that. But you know what? For the first couple of months, I did. But I'm not going to do that this last three weeks. If I get asked a question, I'm going to hit it hard.
Okay. As a developer, what do you see taking place in Potomac Yard?
In Potomac Yards?
Well, yes. I mean, where the arena was going to be.
Right.
And I live here, and I've seen Potomac Yard. When I moved in, it was a railroad yard. In fact, the railroad ties in my garden came from that yard. So I have seen it from the ground up. Maybe what I want is different than what a big developer wants, but I would be curious about what as a developer, what you see going in there.
Look, there's good development, there's bad development. There's good developers and there's bad developers, okay? And I think JBG overall is a good developer, okay? Mm-hmm. Everyone has to remember that was zoned for 8 million feet, okay? Several years ago. Now the pandemic has kind of crushed the whole vision of what it was going to become, right? Because that was going to follow in the footsteps of Amazon, and you got Virginia Tech there,
right,
which can still happen, okay? But I don't think you're going to have 8 million square feet of office. And then I don't think it should be anymore, and I'll get into that in a second. But I had breakfast with Andrew McDonald, right, who led up the coalition against that. And he, again, he personally thanked me for standing up out in front of that. And obviously, we were talking about, at length about the arena area. And, he said, I want birds and bunnies. And I said, you're not going to get birds and bunnies, okay? Because Alexandria, we got to get ready for it, all right? We've got expansion coming. They're saying that we're going to go from 170,000 to 250,000 people at some point, okay? So we better get ready for it, all right? And the only areas that you've got, well, you got different areas. We'll get into that in a second if you want on the rezonings. But you got the west side and you got Potomac Yards as dumbbells on the city of where growth can happen. The rest is all infill, all right, that we have to densify, all right? And as a developer, okay, I think we've got to, developers are, what, people like to say they're greedy and all that, all right? But you have to incentivize developers so that they become interested, okay? And I think that we've done some joint ventures with the developers, but I don't think we've incentivized them enough to come into the neighborhoods to say, okay, so if I'm mayor, I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to give you $5 million as the down payment for that property, right? Because the biggest thing in finance, right, is having to put up that upfront cash, okay? Right. So if the city can sponsor that, okay, put up the money for the build, you're going to buy an apartment building, okay, or you're going to buy a commercial office building and convert it, okay? They put up the down payment. So you're incentivizing the developer to become a partner with the city. The city it's not their responsibility to be in the building business, okay? But you can form the partnerships to do that. And as mayor, that's what I would be really concentrating on, because, like I said, we're gonna have to densify, all right? And if you're gonna convert these commercial office buildings to residential, do what your ordinance says, and it usually has to be mixed use on the first floor, especially if you're increasing the FAR, the floor area ratio, right? They didn't do that at 301, and that's when the beginning of the end came for me to say I'm going to run for mayor, right? Because that's bad planning, bad development, right? We are a boutique city, and that's what I want to protect so much. And I don't think that the mayor and the council are protecting it that way. They're saying, all right, yeah, we're going to give you your density. All right, 301 North Fairfax, all right, it was a commercial office building converted to a residential building, right? 48 units. So now you got an affordable housing issue. They designated 2 out of the 48 to affordable housing. That's not scratching the surface, right? Arlington County, Loudoun County, Prince William County, they're all doing 22%, all right? So we got to change our ordinances, all right? You got to allow the developer, if you're going to go in and allow them to go 4 stories, then let them go to 8, Now, I know you got some view shed issues, all right? But you know what? We got to densify, and the only way you're going to densify is go vertical, because there ain't much land left.
Why do we have to densify?
Because we are a boutique city, all right? And the country, 65 to 70% in the next 30 years are going to be living in cities, right? We're no different, right? And people don't want to be living in the New York cities of the world. They want to be living in a wonderful place, like Old Town Alexandria and Alexandria.
But how do you remain a boutique city with increased density?
Well, I live right down on the waterfront of Duke Street, right? And they rezoned a property that was supposed to be first floor. First of all, we got a parking issue, all right, that we're going to have to deal with. And what I'm scared about is that the city's going to become a victim of its own success, all right? So they took 150 existing parking garage, let the developer tear it down and build 3.5 million townhomes. And that's just not looking ahead 20 years, all right? That's saying, okay, I'm going to give you your 6 townhouses. And I spoke out against that at the public hearing. And Mayor Wilson looked at me and said, oh, Mr. Peterson, you can develop at National Harbor, but we can't develop here in Alexandria. I said, Mayor Wilson, that's not the issue. This is bad planning, and you're not looking ahead, right? Because the mayor's job is to be looking out beyond the horizon, and just not right here. People come talk to me about potholes, okay? You know what? My job is not potholes, all right? My job is to say, put $1 million in and go deal with the potholes, okay? Are you going to deal with the potholes? You do? All right, that's your responsibility. And my job is to be looking at the bigger picture, all right? And preserving 150 parking spaces is, all right? Looking at good development, and I'll go back to the 301, all right? they went from, you're supposed to have 16-foot setbacks. They let them go from 16 to 5. All right. So when you say preserving Old Town, all right, you go from 16 on 4 squares around. Look how much land you've lost and the tree canopies that you've lost. Okay. And then when you start looking at the architecture, all right, 1749 we were started, all right, we got to protect that, all right. So I go back to looking at the architecture and what they're doing. Make them use the old brick, all right. Don't let them use all this fabricated, the windows and stuff. I mean, they did the 6 townhouses next to me. They let them use Anderson windows. If you want to use Anderson window in New York City, fine, all right. That's your problem, not ours. And I'm not going to allow that. And I would change the rules in the ARB, all right? And like I said, the brick that they let them use next to my house in there, it's just not appropriate. So there's, like I said, there's good development, there's bad development, and there's good developers, and there's bad developers. And we have to do smart growth development over the next 30 years to preserve the city.
What about green space?
Well,
now, one of my, and I say
I just gave you an example of that, all right? So that's 10 times, that's several hundred feet of canopy green space, all right? So you have to ask me more on green space. I mean, that's a loaded question, right? We are a relatively dense city, and so we have to preserve what we have. So if you're saying going, and it drives me crazy that they talk about anything larger than an 8x8 square is considered a park. That's not a park. You know what? Come on, that's politics again, and I call BS on that. You shouldn't be able to do anything less than at least a quarter an acre as a park.
Well, as I understand it, there are very few restrictions on homeowners in what they choose to build, as long as they meet certain requirements for setbacks, which means they can take up the majority of their yard with a house.
It's called a 10, going up to a 10 FAR is what it's called.
But they still want green space.
So then change the rules.
But I understand that those are rules of the Commonwealth, not from the city.
That's from the Dillon rule. So Mayor Wilson, he just changed the rules, right? Just like he did for zoning for housing, right? Which, don't get me going on that unless you're going to ask me these specific questions.
Do you think that developers are asked to provide enough green space?
No. Developers, I'll say it again, there's good development, there's bad development, right? And I don't think, and it sounds arrogant, but if you look at the developments the Peterson Company's done over the last 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. My father was, if there was ever a tree hugger as a developer, it was him. He loved landscaping, okay? Or you go over to National Harbor, and he taught me a lot because we went up to Pennsylvania, and we put those trees in. And where North people, they put up the little 8-foot tree. Oh, he bought trees that were 30 feet tall, and he bought 200 of them. So when you had a canopy when you walked in, but he said that's the way he liked to develop, mm-hmm. right? And you're going to make an impact because you get these plans and then say, look at what's going to look like in 20 years. Well, what's it going to look like right now? All right, and that's what you're talking about right now is canopy and green space. So yeah I think you got to change the rules. And again, you're talking about zoning for housing. So you got a single family neighborhood, and now you're saying that you've got a single family house, and you can tear that house down, or you have a vacant lot, and you're going to build 4 townhouses mm-hmm. or sixplexes. You're just ruining the fabric of that neighborhood, right? That's not what it was designed to do. So that's not good development. And the mayor's just said, I don't care about good development. I'm going to win on points for affordable housing. Well, there's better ways to deal with affordable housing than tearing up a neighborhood with townhouses. And I'm not against townhouses, but it belongs in its own areas. So I totally disagree with zoning for housing.
Well, that I would agree. Living in Delray, I would totally agree with you on that. Do you think you can do what you want to do in 3 years?
I haven't said if I would stop at 3 years. I've asked if I want to run for Congress, and I said, no, I don't.
But
because people are seeing
that. You've got to start at 3 years.
Right. Well, you know what? I will see how much I throw up if I'm the mayor. because you know what it does. It is a lifeless, a thankless job. You know, and you know what? I'm not 60 yet, so I'm not dead yet, as my father used to say. I've got the energy to put in 6 years. If my wife and I decide that after 3, then that's where we'll go. But you can make a lot of change in 3 years. And what I'm looking to do is make cultural change, right? I'm looking for a cultural change. And again, bottom-up approach, not top-down approach, management style, because that's what's happening right now.
I know you said that you would work full-time.
Yes.
Being mayor.
And I'm going to give my salary to the fire department and the police.
Your salary.
Correct.
Do you think, regardless of whether you win the race or not, do you think that the city would be better served with a full-time, better paid mayor?
Yes, on both. Okay, I don't I don't want to bring money into, but the amount of hours that the mayor puts in, all right, to pay him $40,000 is just not. That's just not fair and equitable, all right? You're spending so much of your time. At the same time, I think it's too important to be the mayor of a 170,000 person city, and you're half-time. Yeah. And you can say, "Oh, but I do." No, you got a full-time job. Mata and
right.
These other 2 candidates got full-time jobs. That's just, you're not doing a service to the city by doing it half-time. I just don't think.
If you didn't win the race, would you remain a gentle thorn in the side of
a gentle what?
A gentle thorn in the side of.
I've learned to be that in a lot of different instances. So, well, let me say this. I pledged to Andrew McDonald. I said, if I don't win, I still pledge to support the city and what we're going after and being on this side and representing the city as it gets developed with JBG. Because I know the JBG guys, and like I said, they're a good development firm.
Yeah.
But I've got there are certain things that I think the arena can be. All right. So, we're looking for different revenue sources. Okay. If you look at National Harbor, right, they have a 5,000 person convention center space. Okay.
Right.
People, when they think of convention space, they think of 20,000, 30,000 people coming. No. Gaylord has a really good economic model, all right? It's where they don't overload the system, but you get, like I said, you get 2 or 3, two conventions a week coming in, and they're the anchor that helps feed National Harbor, all right? Maybe you do a convention center over at the arena space, okay? That becomes an anchor. Now, I don't know if the viewers some of them have been to the Mosaic over in Fairfax County. All right, it's a very nice, new, modern way of developing. All right, so they got a 5-story Target. All right, where Targets used to take up 30 acres. No, you just densify. It's about densifying now, and I think that's what we've got to be doing. But at the same time, we don't need a Pentagon City, or a Tyson's Corner. We need that open and air, and Peterson's companies have done several of them called Fairfax Corner. So they're open air lifestyle centers. All right, so much less development, intense development, movie theaters, bowling alleys, lots of restaurants, boutique shops. But it's not the, it's not the national chains of sorts, and it's not the WalMarts, but it's an upscale. And that's what that area needs, I think, because it's not going to overload the system. And you're going to get your fair share, I think, of office. But it's going to be more tech-oriented. Look, the pandemic has changed the commercial model around the country. And so you just have to adjust to those changes. I mean, that's what large-scale development, what I did for years, is you're constantly changing, right? So whatever, I can't tell you how many plans that we went through that said, that's what we're going to do at National Harbor. And then my father came in and said, no, we're not doing that. Throw that one away. We're doing this. Because everything evolves. And like I just said, the pandemic, that was a big game changer. But everyone has to adjust. And that's what people are doing within the city of Alexandria. they got a vacant office building. They're converting it to an area of need, and that is residential. Because, like I said, growth is coming. We just got to do it in a smart way, right? And not let the developers say, "Oh, please, just take away my. I don't want to do 16-foot setbacks. Give me 5." No, I'm not going to let you do that.
What kind of flexibility do developers have once a project gets started?
The rules are set by the city. If you're talking about the city.
Well, no, what I was really thinking of was something else. When Potomac Yard was built,
So you're talking. So you go in and you do a major rezoning, and they give you parameters that say as long as you stay within the parameters of this, all right. So let's just say I zone you for if you go in and look at the zoning ordinance for approval for Potomac Yards, you're going to see those different types of saying that, all right, we're going to let you do X, Y, and Z. And we're going to give you this latitude and that latitude. As long as you stay within that, you come in with a site plan, and then we're going to we approve it. So the city council, it has to go through the planning commission, and then it has to go through the city council. But in this instance, I think the planning commission has a much greater responsibility. Because I don't want to take anything away from the city council, but to a certain extent, it's a rubber stamp, right? Because the politics have already been played out, okay? And especially in this regime, they already know the votes, all right? Because I was at a public hearing, and a couple of the council members were doing this, and a citizen stood up and said, "Will you please put your cell phone down?" Because the vote had already been done, and guess what? It went through 7-0.
Yeah.
That's which you have to kind of avoid. And if you're going to have that type of political system, then the planning commission has to do its job.
Yeah, I guess I was really thinking more of flexibility with how trends change, how design change. I felt like Potomac Yard, for instance, was built out over this very long
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you only have 2 areas like that left. You got the West End, and you got Potomac Yards. So you do have to look at that as a 20, 30-year play, right? And like I was just trying to explain, that it's going to change, right? The game plan that you created in 2020 is different. It's going to be different in 2030. We just don't know what that is going to be yet. And like I've stated in the past, the Potomac Yards can be a very good development, right? Because you're 5 miles from the nation's capital of the world, okay?
Yeah.
So it needs and deserves to be one of the major developments in the region, and it will be, I think. JBG will do that, and like I said, but what's ultimately built, we don't know yet.
Okay. Let's see if we have any questions for you, Lucille.
Oh, yes, we do.
Please speak
Okay.
up.
This is Lucille right
Well,
here.
you will.
I was just getting ready to write it down.
Okay.
Should I say it?
Yeah, write it down. She's taking the questions off of the live stream.
Oh, okay.
So that
You
because
want
I
me to
don't,
and then I'll read them, or you can do
I'll read them.
Okay.
I'll ask you,
Good.
and then we'll go from there. It's a little too convoluted for me to try and do it at the same
Okay.
time. Yeah. I well remember sitting back on the very first conversations about Potomac Yard and what it was going to look like.
Oh, so you're going back 12, 13, back.
I'm going back 30,
Oh, really? Okay.
25, 30 years. Yeah. Like my street was supposed to dead end into a park. Now my street has a stoplight and is one of the only few through streets, so much more traffic. Yeah, it's been interesting to watch it. The same thing with where the development is across the street, which used to be the old industrial park.
Right. I used to get my car repaired there.
Yeah.
But again, that's what Amazon creates. All right. You've got anchors now. Arlington has it, but we get part of that as well.
Okay. Oops. There went my iPad and my pen, but thank you. Okay. All right. How long have you lived in Alexandria?
I have lived in Alexandria for over 30 years.
Okay.
My wife was born in Alexandria
In the
Hospital.
hospital.
Her mother was a nurse for 25 years, and I'm on the board there. So
Okay.
we are very invested. We have 7 kids, triplets and twins. Thank God 6 of 7 have left the nest, except we got one left at Stanford. And I was just with her over the weekend at one of our son's weddings out in Colorado.
Okay. Mayors do a lot of ribbon cutting, reading proclamations. Would you be up for that? Or would you delegate it to the vice mayor?
I'm not a very good delegator from that standpoint. If it's that important, then I will be at the ribbon cutting. What I most want to do is just be a face of change. And if I was part of that change, then I want to be there proudly cutting that ribbon.
Okay. We like that. And Lucille is still writing. Have you always lived on Duke Street?
I lived in Bellhaven.
Okay.
I've lived on Duke Street for almost 10 years.
Okay.
But I lived in Bellhaven for several years.
Okay. I think this was probably, getting to the fact, well, are you an Alexandria citizen? You have had a fairly low profile in terms of...
That's like I've said it 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I like to keep a low profile.
Yeah.
I like to keep a low profile.
That's okay. How do you feel about pedestrian-only blocks? And they've got to be referring primarily to Old Town in this, I would think.
Are you saying pedestrian only? Okay.
Like
so I think what you're talking about is what they did
On King Street.
on King Street.
Yeah.
And I think that what they've done there, I walk down there almost every night with my golden retriever. Because I think what they've done, I mean, I like to tell my wife a lot. I'm just like, when I come back from a walk, I'm like, I feel like I'm like living at a resort, a little resort town, all right? Because they did that with the pandemic, and I think it's wonderful. Now, how far you can take it up, because I know Councilman Chapman wants to extend it up.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at development, okay, what is appropriate in one block is not appropriate in another, okay? So you are primarily restaurant oriented on the first block, okay? So people are coming in and you're sitting and you're people watching as people are walking by. You don't have that in the second block because you've got the warehouse, you've got the ice cream shop. Then now you just have regular pedestrian shops. So you don't get that same feel. So would I be against it? I mean, if I'm mayor, would I vote against that? I wouldn't be against it, but just don't expect the same intense feel that you're getting on the block, the lower block. You're just not gonna get that feel, right? And the more you march up in development, when you start, your intensity is at the waterfront, and the further you move up, you tend to lose that intensity. Okay, and so would you lose that in that warehouse block? No, not necessarily. But I just don't think, as a planner, as a real estate developer, I would necessarily say, "Oh, I want to do that. 'Cause I want to repeat what's blocked down." You're not going to get that.
But once you do something like that, and the same thing with the accommodations that have been made for outdoor dining, which take up a parking space.
Well, if you hadn't gotten rid of those 150 parking spaces that I just talked about a block down, we wouldn't have
But
that
even
issue.
further up King Street,
Okay.
Can you ever go back? Or,
No. The citizens get used to what that develop.
Okay.
I've done that a lot at a development, and when you try to change that, people don't like change in general, right? And
True.
that's what I've done there. Why are you changing that? But that's where my dog park. Now you're moving my dog park? No, you can't do that.
All right.
Here's a follow-up for that one.
Okay. What else do you think the city really needs beyond what we have discussed? Is there something I haven't asked you about?
Well, like I said, I think that the income-based housing is going to be our biggest thorn in our sides. Okay, as we, like I said, people want to come to these boutique cities, all right, and we got to get ready for it. And how we do that through smart growth and maintain that boutique through the canopies and all that, I think is going to be very important as we move forward. And I think, like I said, incentivizing developers. But I think that the city, we need to be protecting these certain areas, right? You're going to have gentrification or the swaying over to that. And so if we need to put moratoriums on certain identified areas, just say, no, developer, That's off limits to you for the next 15 or 20 years, all right? And if we need property assessment freezes so that properties aren't going from 300 to 700,000, and the developer's going, that's where I want to go. No, you can't go there either. So I think we've got to protect certain zones within, but at the same time, we're going to have to densify the areas where we're rezoning. So if you're going to rezone it, then take up what we're going to need over the next 20 to 30 years. And that's what, to me, is what, the responsibility of the mayor is looking 20 years out.
This is back to the pedestrian-only spaces. How does it affect the elderly and disabled people? Have you seen good, bad? Now, the only thing I can think of is that you can't pull a car up in front of, say, the warehouse for your 97-year-old mother
Right.
to get out of the car and go have lunch. And so you're going to have to park somewhere and then walk.
Can't have your cake and eat it too. All right, so that's a loaded question. I mean, if you're gonna have that pedestrian oriented that people love to do, I mean, look at that. I was at the car show a couple of weeks ago. Right, that's the intensity that place, those blocks deserve. And so, I'm not that I'm advocating for what Councilman Chapman wants to do, but if you're gonna plan and have this wonderful pedestrian space, so get golf carts. And you're asking me a quick question, but there's ways to get around stuff like this.
Oh my God, I remember my mother in a golf cart at the National Zoo. It was frightening.
No, I'm just saying shuttle. If we
Yeah.
got the shuttle, then just have the golf carts as shuttles to get
I
them.
like that idea. We may have to. I could think about that myself. All right. Well, we're wrapping up. We're coming up on our 45 minutes. That's
Okay.
generally how we try to shape that. Lucille, do I have anything else from you?
I think that's it.
Okay. Any final words you would like to say to the electorate who are looking?
No, look, I am. You asked me to be earlier. You talked about the Republican versus Democrat. I want to appeal. The issues that we talk about, it gets me a little upset sometimes when you talk about crime at 30% versus and car thefts up 58%. It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. So why pick me as that? Okay, affordable housing, income-based housing, education. We're in the 20th percentile in the state, and we only get 20% of our budget from the state, where some municipalities get 80%. All right. What I'm gonna be a big proponent of from my business days, all right? The world does it in Congress. They get lobbied every day, all right? I think we need to go fight for what is ours, and I don't think we fought enough for what we deserve, okay? Because we're seen as this rich, affluent city, right? And the Hampton Roads politicians don't want us to give us money, okay? So you got to go fight for it, all right? And that's federal grants as well. And so I got into a little bit of a argument with the councilwomen, and they said, "Oh, we have lobbyists. You have a lobbyist that you use periodically." No, I'd probably get a full-time lobbyist because we have so many issues that your return on investment. If you can go out and take your education budget from 20 to 30%, well, you just picked up $18 million. So I'm not going to worry about paying my lobbyist, $250,000, right? Because my return on investment is really good. But there's lots of different issues where we need to go fight for what is ours. So that's going to be one of the areas that I would be concentrating on as well. I would probably bring on a full-time lobbyist.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I want to be seen of as the mayor that looks at the broader issues and is consensus builder. Because I don't think that has happened over the last 6 years. And I think that when I heard that the mayor wasn't running, I said, you know what? This is an opportunity for the city to have new ideas, fresh voices, and the citizens really need a voice, and they don't have that. And that's what I want to give the citizens. Because you know what? I don't pretend to know all the answers, but the more and more I've gone around and talked to people, that's I was talking to a police officer at an event a couple of weeks ago. And I said, what don't you like about your job? She said, it's not so much what I don't like. He said, but they don't listen. She goes, she was Latino. She said, I'm one of the only people on the force that speak Spanish. So they send me all over the place. And I think it's unfair that I don't get paid more for that. I said, you're absolutely right, and you should. All right, so those are the areas that we got to concentrate on, being fair and transparent and listening to the people. Because if you don't listen, you're not going to learn. So I want to listen, learn, react, and then act accordingly.
Do something about it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. And we thank you for joining us. Stephen, I really appreciate your driving in from the airport tonight. Yeah. I know sometimes schedules get it's challenging right. Sometimes.
Now I got to go back and talk to my campaign manager and say, what did you miss that one for? So
we appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone again here on Wednesday at 1 p.m. with Aaliyah Gaskins. Good night. Okay.